Hello and welcome back. In this session, we will take a look at function scope, closures, and arrow functions. Okay, let us look at function scope first. So in the last session, we have seen how to define a function and stuff. So let me create new file here called funcscope.js. Okay, so let me again define a function. Before I define a function, let me define a variable here where num1 is equal to 10, where num2 is equal to 20, and let me define a function add console.log num1 plus num2. Okay, so this is a function which is using the variable which is declared outside the function. So these are declared outside the function. I need to call this method here and okay, so now it is adding these two values. Since these variables are declared outside, so this has got global access. All the functions will have access to these two variables. Let me define the same variable within the method num1 is equal to 30 and var num2 is equal to 40. Okay, let me see by running this. Now it is 70, which is the addition of these two numbers 40 plus 30. Whenever we declare a variable with the same name within the function, the scope of these variables are within this particular function. However, this has got a global scope. So this is global scope and this is local scope. Okay, so let me define another function here. Function subtract, and here what I will do is I will try to access this. So let me change the variable name is num1 and num2 and console.log num2 minus num1. I'm trying to access the variables which are defined in another function inside this subtract. Okay, and let me call this subtract here. And run this. Okay, I get the error num2 is not defined. So this shows that these two variables which are defined within this function has got only local scope. So that means it can be only used within this particular function. However, if I change this to num2 to num1, which has got global scope, and this is accessible from any other function. So let me rerun this. Okay, so this is 30 and 20 minus 10 is 10. So this is that value of the subtract method. So we have seen global and local scope. Okay, now let us look at closures. In JavaScript, it is also possible to nest the functions. So we have two functions here, function add and function subtract. So what I will do is I will copy this function subtract and then paste it inside add. So within add function we have subtract function also. Okay, so let me take out this first and let me take out this. Okay, so we have add method and inside that add method we have subtract method. Now this subtract method is nested within this add method or add function. Let us call add function. Okay, let us see what happens first. Okay, we get 30. Okay, we call this method which is called add and it has printed 30. So if I call subtract, okay, now I cannot directly call subtract here since it is nested. Okay, now okay, as we can see, subtract cannot be called from here. However, we can call subtract within this add method. Okay, so let me take this out. Okay, now we got the same answer as before. So one is 30, the addition is 30 and subtraction is 10. So if you notice here, within the subtract method, we have access to num2 and num1. Since it is of global scope, it can be accessed anywhere from any method. Okay, so now let us change this from num2 to num1, and these are defined within this add method, and these are not global. Okay, so these are local scope variables. Okay, let me change this value to 50 here just to avoid the confusion here. Okay, and let me clear the screen and rerun this. Okay, now this add method is being called here and it is printing 30. Now for our surprise, we have access to num2 and num1 even though it is local scope. Okay, so this is nothing but closure, wherein the nested function will have access to both global variables and the local variables within the function in which it is enclosed. That means add function has got access to, which is these two variables, num1 and num2. The subtract method has got access to both the variables which are defined within this parent method and the variables which this parent method has got access to, which is num1 and num2. So this forms a closure. Okay, so this type of behavior is known as closure. So the other question is, what happens if I define a variable here? Say for example, num4 is equal to 50. We know that this num4 is accessible within this subtract method, Is it available to add method? No, it is not available to add method. So this kind of forms an encapsulation wherein this num4 is only accessible within the subtract method and not the parent method, which is add method. Okay, for example, num4. Okay, so let me try to add num4 here and rerun this. Okay, as you can see, there is no num4. The num4 is not accessible here. That is why we got an error here saying num4 is not defined. Okay. Okay, let me take it out and rerun this. Now I get the value as 70. Okay, so that is this num4 is accessible only within the subtract method, and it has got no access to the add method, which is the parent of this subtract method. So we have seen function scope and closures here. We will see arrow functions now. Okay, so let me take the other example wherein function full name and f name comma l name here return f name plus l name. Okay, so let me comment out this particular part. Okay, now we will call this function full name Warner console.log. Okay, so it has printed David Warner here. Now the same function can be written in this form. Var complete name is equal to, this is a function which is anonymous function, and this arrow symbol return. Okay, so this function takes two parameters, f name comma l name, and we are returning f name plus l name. This function is now reduced to, we don't have full name here, okay, which is the method name. Instead we have brackets, and within brackets we have the parameters, and we have this arrow, and inside this we are returning first name and last name. Okay, so now we can call this method complete name by passing the value David and Warner. Okay, so this is again console.log. Okay, so let me comment this out and rerun this. Okay, we got an error here. Console.log full name David Warner. Okay, full name is not defined. Sorry. Okay, so let me comment this out and rerun this. Still have error. F name is not defined. F name is here. Okay, so there's a spelling mistake here. Let me correct this, save this, and rerun this. Okay, now this entire function is reduced to arrow functions. This can further be reduced into var complete name is equal to f name comma l name followed by arrow. So we can also remove these flower brackets. Okay, so let us remove one by one. Okay, so we can remove this flower bracket, and once we remove the flower bracket, there is no need for this return also. Okay, so this should give us the same result as before. Okay, so let me rerun this. Now this entire function, this function was reduced to this arrow function, and this arrow function was further reduced to this form here. Okay, let me execute this, and we got the same result. So one more thing which we didn't cover earlier was, for a function you can also have a default value. For example, okay, so here f name and l name. L name I can give it as Warner. So Warner will be our default value. So if I don't provide any value here, okay, it should still print David Warner. Okay, however, if I provide the value, different value, for example Boone, then it should print David Boone. Okay, so we can provide the parameters with the default values in JavaScript. Let me define another function here, print names. Okay, and I want to print, for example, print names David, Sachin, Virat. These are the parameters which I want to pass into print names. So instead of typing the parameter names here, what we can do is we can make use of, there is a rest parameter which is dot 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 3 dot followed by the name of the parameter names. Okay, so here I can print console.log. So here I can print all the names here, which will be an array of values. This is called rest parameters. Okay, so we can pass in multiple values to these print names, and these names will be printed as an array. Let me save this and run this. As you can see, Raj, David, Sachin and Virat are printed as array. As you can see, we can have the default values for the function parameters, as well as we can pass in various parameters as an array by using this rest parameter. So the rest parameter will use 3 dots followed by the name of the parameter. So that is the end of this session. Thanks for watching.